a big problem in terms of overpopulation, which caused a huge problem in poverty in Elizabethan England. So this podcast is going to be about the undeserving poor and the deserving poor, okay? And we're also going to look at how the towns dealt with these people. So the wealthy were expected to help those who were below them in the great chain of being. That's what was expected. So charitable donations did not help the problem long term though. People throwing people a few pence when they're, begging on the streets wasn't going to solve the problem of poverty. And the deserving poor were the people who had injuries or really ill or poor health, who genuinely couldn't get work. And before Elizabeth I, attitudes to the poor were largely unsympathetic. People were like, oh, just go and get yourself a job, we're not going to give you any charity. So that was a major problem. Many able-bodied paupers could not find work in urban areas, so they went to obviously, try and get work in cities, and they couldn't find it. And the deserving poor were helped under Elizabethan reign, so Elizabeth was determined to help the people who were actually genuinely poor. And the Archbishop Whitgift established almshouses in South London, so they're like charity houses, and they provided accommodation and food for those in need. So something was starting to be done in Elizabeth's reign. But the undeserving poor, she was really concerned about this group. And untrustworthy beggars were the people who had absolutely no interest in doing work at all. That they could do work, but they weren't interested in working. And many of them really were seen as vagabonds or criminals. And in 1567, Thomas Harman published a book about the scams that they did. And it really hardened attitudes up towards the poor. And the wealthy people began to question the honesty of all the poor people. So there was definitely lots of people who were basically swinging the lead. They were pretending that they were poor, but they weren't really. So there was the counterfeit crank who would bite on soap and, try to froth at the mouth so people thought he was ill, so then they would throw money at them. The bare-top trickster, where a woman would open up a top to bare a chest, and then she would lure a man away, and then there'd be people waiting there, and then they'd rob the man. That's what happened quite often. There was a clapper dudgeon who would cut himself and put dirty bandages on and things, so it made it look like he was close to death, and people would feel sorry for him. And then there was Tom O'Bedlam, who would pretend to be mad, go around barking like a dog and things like that, crawling on the floor, and people would think, oh, this poor person's mad, so again they would give him some charity. So in terms of the undeserving poor, Henry VIII and Edward VI had passed poor laws to try and help this situation, but they'd actually made it worse. And from 1531, there was 3 things that they would do to the undeserving poor. First of all, they'd be publicly whipped if they got caught doing it. Secondly, they'd have a hole burned in their ear or drilled through the ear. And thirdly, they would be hanged. So that's how they thought they would manage to be able to deal with it. But during Elizabethan times, she tried to be a little bit more specific in terms of how things were dealt with, and she expected each town to deal with the poor people in the way that they saw fit. So this is what the town started to do to deal with the people who were poor. So in 1576, there was an Act for setting the poor on work. So the local authorities had to find them work. So if somebody was unemployed and poor in York, York would be responsible for sorting that out. The national policy, however, still remained punishment, so it would still be those 3 things. That first of all, you would be whipped, then you'd have a hole drilled in your ear, and then you would be hanged. London did something with Bridewell Palace. So basically, they made that homeless shelter, and they also made something called Bedlam for the mentally ill, and the hospitals for orphans for the, the poor and the sick. The problem with Bedlam, though, is some people were put in there because they were poor, not actually because they were mentally ill. So there was issues with that, and some of them were kept in there, for years, and some never got out of there. But they were trying to address the issues. Now, if you were in York, you got given a beggar licence, and you'd wear a badge to be identified as a beggar, and there would be a master beggar, so a bit like an overseer, to keep others in check, to make sure it was only the deserving ones that were using those licences. And there was also jobs for the people who were unemployed, like weaving and spinning, so they could, help in terms of that area. And there was houses of correction, so they were a little bit like the workhouses that happened in the 1800s, and people were scared of those, but it did give people somewhere to go. Ipswich gave hospitals for the old and the sick, so that was something commendable. And there was youth training schemes set up so the people who were young wouldn't then fall into poverty later in life. And there was also houses of correction again. A lot of the towns turned to houses of correction to help up these people somewhere. And for Norwich, they decided they were going to tax the rich to pay for the poor. That's something that they decided on themselves. And they split the groups into idle and unfortunate poor, which is basically the same as deserving and undeserving poor, and they treated them differently accordingly. So these people did different things, but really it was the poor laws that started to make some inroads to the poor in 1601. So she said, Elizabeth, that the wealthy should be taxed to pay for the poor. She was adamant about that. And these types of taxes never appeared on this scale before, never. But those deemed able to work, but did not, were still dealt with very harshly, because she didn't want everyone pretending to be poor when they weren't. And the helpless poor would be given food and shelter. The able-bodied were expected to work for their food and shelter, and the idle poor were whipped or put in a house of correction or hanged. Simply though, punishing the poor did not work, and she knew that. She knew she needed to do something to solve these issues. So from 1601, begging did decrease, but this could have been due to the House of Correction. And it remained until it was reformed in the 19th century, the House of Correction, because basically they were the workhouses. But these poor laws that she did introduce in 1601, they did stop people from starving to death, so that was really significant. And also she made it clear that she wasn't going to tolerate people just begging on the streets. They had to show that they were willing to do work. And she did split them into the two groups, the deserving and the undeserving.